Hey, good morning. This is Richard Hsu, host of Hsu Untied. Today I'm really thrilled to have with me as my guest Lauren Creel, who's a partner at Cooley. Lauren, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
So, Lauren, let me start by asking you, as I often like to do, is why you went to law school in the first place?
Yeah, good question. I would have sworn I'd never go to law school. I even visited like a law school class when I was in undergrad and was like, that's not for me. I started down this path to be an economist. So after I graduated undergrad, I actually worked at an economic consulting firm. We did plaintiff side work. That was who we worked for, were lawyers. And I was like, don't want to be those people. Um, Went off to become an economist, and started a PhD program. And then just sort of along the way, figured out like I wanted to be more practical. And kind of wanted to change my career. And so it actually kind of came around to the idea of law school.
Hmm.
And so I ended up going to become a lawyer and
Hmm.
graduated. And here we're at.
What were you doing in your economics degree? Like, what were you pursuing in your graduate school? You said you were a PhD student or something?
So I was a PhD, and I was more in the big splits, or you go macroeconomics, which is kind of think of like the big global world, and then microeconomics, which is more around kind of how people act, rational behavior.
Uh-huh.
I'd started to veer down that path. So I did 3 years in the PhD program, and I'd got through the coursework. And then at that point, you actually start to do your dissertation and spend another good 3 years doing that. And I think at that point, I have a lot of respect for people that it's kind of lonely, right? Like, I mean, it's 3 years doing a
Yeah.
dissertation and you're driving a lot of it. And I'm better on projects, right? Like especially with my clients, right? Even if we do a financing or a big transaction, it's not 3 years. It's not even six
Yeah.
months, right? And that's just, I
Yeah.
think, better for how I work.
Interesting. What was law school like? Did you like that? Was it a good fit for you?
Yeah, great question. I'm so thankful that I had worked before law school, because I think it actually made it. I know, I know a lot of people are like, it's so difficult, but I came in and it just treated it like a job, right? Like I showed up for class and then I stayed kind of till in the library till the end of the day, got my stuff done, and went home. And having worked previously, and not nearly as intense as a lawyer, but not nothing. Um, I I actually really liked law school because like when you're done, you go home and like you do stuff, right? Like I don't know, I find like with clients, right? Like they're like you have client needs that pop up, and you don't have that. So I kind of thought it was a luxury.
Did you think it was easier than being a graduate student in economics, or what would you
Oh,
say about that?
I thought it was so much easier. And in part, maybe that's like like economist, like if you're an economist, you're basically like this, like, like it's math light, right? I mean, it is
Yeah.
just hardcore math. And I could get through it, but it was not natural to me, right? Whereas I feel like, if you know any sort of math, I feel like lawyers are viewed as like, oh, so, right? Like we're not viewed as being like a mathematically like inclined profession. So no, I thought it was for me so much easier.
Yeah, I had a very similar experience because I was actually an undergrad. I was a double E out of Caltech, and I went to law school afterwards. And I remember when they were saying about how hard law students were working compared to college. I was thinking, wow, I've never had it so easy in my life.
Yeah, it's refreshing, right? Like it was refreshing. So
So now, did you decide in law school you wanted to do what looks like corporate law, or did you try litigation, or you already knew you didn't want to do litigation because of the plaintiff's work, or tell me how you came around to that?
I was kind of clueless. I mean, right. So law school, right, does a ton of litigation work. I was lucky because I summered in Texas. That's where I started practicing. And while we were there, you can both split your summers, but then even there, we kind of rotated, right? So I got to do a little bit of litigation at the first firm I went to, and very quickly figured out like I do not enjoy this. I mean, it takes me forever to write, and it's just so much of that is writing,
Yes.
versus the contract stuff just sort of like it's more linear, right? Which my brain sort of wants to do
Yeah.
that. I think it's
Yeah.
got some math inclination, just not as much as an economist needs.
Uh-huh.
So it just was naturally a much better fit.
Makes sense because contracts have definitions that you have to use, right? So there's
Yeah,
got a programming kind of feel to it, so that
that's
totally.
exactly right. That's
Yeah,
exactly
yeah,
right.
yeah. And in contracts, you're not writing prose. I mean, most of it is forms. So, yes, you're drafting clauses and things like that, but you're not, it's not an essay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
exactly right. You don't have to start from scratch and like
yeah,
come up with
yeah,
all.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
So
also very structured language too. It's not like just, anyways, you get the point.
yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so what did you do when you were I guess you were Vincent Elkins. Did you do corporate startup work, or were you doing more M&A? What kind of work did you do there?
Yeah, no, it's so I started in the Austin office at Vincent Elkins, and at that time, so they did have a startup practice. I think it was hard to be only startup. I think the Austin market, in the past 11 years has massively changed. That's probably not a true statement now. So when I was there, I think 50% of my work was probably public companies. We actually did quite a bit of work for foreign private issuers. So there's like a niche, especially at V&E, where I did a lot of work for like Nordic shipping companies. So, like decently esoteric, but quite enjoyable. And then I did probably the other bit was like M&A and then startup work. And actually really enjoyed that. That was one of the reasons when I came over to Cooley, I lateraled as a third year. One of the things I liked about Cooley is that you could kind of be this like jack of all trades. I'm pure play ECVC startups now, but at the time I really liked kind of getting to dabble in everything.
I see. Well, at the time, did you like the ECVC side the most, or there were other things, the other areas you liked just as much?
I actually think I like the capital markets stuff the best. Like I'm kind of a technical lawyer, and so I kind of like you've got rules on the pubco side, and you're rewarded for being very detail oriented. And I think those transactions too, just the startup market was seeing like a lot of early stage stuff, but I wasn't really getting to see the lifespan of a startup, right? I still was quite junior as well. So I really thought I would like more gravitate towards the startups or the pubco side. I mean, the thing that I think I also didn't realize coming out of law school is like, some of it matters on the practice of the law, but some of it matters like the quality of life, right? And for me, like I hate staying up late, right? And like capital markets deals, like they have a timeline, like there's fire drills, right? I'm not a good adrenaline junkie, so like the lifestyle also wasn't great for me.
So what did bring you out to Cooley and the West Coast? What brought that out? How'd that come
about? So my husband worked for a company in Austin, and then ended up I think he just wanted a change of pace, right? And so he ended up finding a job out here. And at the time, it was very hard for me to say like, oh no, they don't do the kind of work I do, right? Like they do startups, right? Like I didn't have a compelling reason to not move. And so we did. And in retrospect, at the time I wasn't keen to move. I loved Austin. I think it's a wonderful place to be. My family is there. Moving to Cooley has been so good for my career. I think just like the opportunities that I've had, the quality of clients, and just kind of the culture. So dumb luck, right?
So is your practice now pretty much all ECVC, or you still do it's all ECVC?
No, it's entirely. I'm entirely ECVC now.
Yeah. And is that by design, or just kind of the practice has kind of evolved that way?
I think increasingly it became by design. I mean, it's interesting, right? Because I feel like people practice differently in the sense some people are super strategic with their career. I've never had great luck at looking at my trajectory, right? I started out economist. I've not had great luck predicting where I'll be. And so I think it just was organic in the sense that like the people I really enjoyed mentorship from were in the ECVC space. I liked the quality of life better. And so increasingly I just had fewer and fewer clients that did the M&A thing or did the pubco thing. And then at some point I was like, well, you have one or two, like we might as well just go all in, right? Yeah.
Now, I'm sure you do a broad range of industries. Give me a feel for the kinds of technology. I'm assuming most of them are technology companies, but give me a little bit of feel for the kind of range of industries you do work in now.
Yeah, that's right. So so some people do specialize. I'm industry agnostic. At least at this point in my career, I'd say my clientele generally shifts more on the life science side. And that's really just like by virtue of what comes through the pipeline, right? And like the referrals and that sort of thing. But at least from what I do, a lot of the stuff under the hood looks the same, regardless of if you're like life science or not. So, those can be med device companies. They can also be, ones that are more pure play life science. And then on the tech side, I've got some that are in the security space, kind of all over the retail, all over the map.
Do you find yourself liking the life sciences stuff more versus the tech, or what sort of kind of suits your interests more, would you say?
It's a good question. I mean, what's nice in the life sciences, like a lot of times too, they're like working to solve health problems, right? Like, so that feels great. Like it's very good at the end of the day. You can kind of go home and be like, I'm in playing my small part to like make the world a better place where, and sometimes I can understand the big picture better, right? Sometimes on the tech side, the stuff actually may not, the B2C is very easy to understand. Sometimes the B2B, right? I don't operate a business. So I may not understand the pain points as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it is fun. I mean, like, right, with the life science companies, you're in the room with like doctors and, with like, truly that like I'm the dumbest person in the room. And that's kind of fun in the, wanting to always be in the learning mode in academics. But that's not to say, still in the tech side too, you get really smart people. They just may not have the initials after their name.
Now, do you find that you get to use your economics background in any kind of intriguing way, or maybe in a way that you wouldn't expect? Does that come into play at all ever?
I mean, I think the best thing that came from that is I'm fluent in Excel, right? Like it's people I think come in and they like, we have to create pro formas and understand how they operate, right? Like, and I think a lot of people, for example, if you're an English major, you maybe never touched Excel in your life, right? And that learning curve on the job to both be learning this job, but also like just learning a software platform, I kind of took that out of it. I do think there is something to be said with the math kind of background of like, with contracts, it's like you define something and it's defined, right? Like you don't get to call it 5 different things, and that's would be how it holds in math. And so in contracts too, I think that's helpful for me to be like, no, like we gave it a defined term and it needs to all hang together.
Yeah.
So maybe the training, I think the rigor of the training helped. Beyond that, yeah, maybe not.
Yeah. So now, do you find yourself liking California? It sounds like you've been here a while. Do you miss Texas at all, or no going back?
I mean, I miss it. My family's there, and so my dad worked for an oil company. We moved all the time growing up, but I spent the most time in Texas, so it's still like home by like anyone's standards. The longer we stay here, the more this becomes home. It's well, from a professional standpoint, it's fantastic, right? There are just so many opportunities here. We've got 2 little kids now. And so I do think too, like, it's just the quality of life is fantastic, right? Like I can go outside at any time in Texas. Like that's not a thing in the summer, right? Like you're going to roast, right? So I miss it. I wish family was closer, but California's turned out to be home.
Well, obviously you seem to be enjoying your career a lot. Do you ever think that you might do something else at some point, or do you ever think that far ahead, or you're more just more like in the short term kind of vision?
No, it's a great question. I mean, I think I'm organic, right? Like right now, I never thought I'd make partner. I just never thought I wanted to be a partner, candidly, right? Like coming out of law school, that just wasn't, I was like, oh, I'll go do it for a couple of years and then like go in-house somewhere, right? So I think it's like I end up figuring out like the path if I enjoy it and kind of go all in. And then if it's working out, fantastic. If not, do a course correction. So for now, Cooley's been a fantastic, fantastic home for me.
Well, Lauren, it's been wonderful chatting with you, and I really appreciate you taking the time. If you do decide to do something else, please come back and tell me that.
Yeah, fair. Great to talk to you as well.
This is Richard Hsu and Lauren Creel. Thanks.